Welcome back to the Nassau Hockey Podcast. James Nichols, John Zella here with you for another episode with not a lot of information, but we're gonna make it work. We always find, I think we've said this a million times on the show, to lead it off. We always say there's not a lot to talk about, and then we wind up having an hour and a half episode. But we're gonna try to keep it a little snappy today. We'll see where it goes. I think I have some provocative stuff planned for us today, and I'm taking the reins back from Mr. Nichols here. I want to start off not on Long Island here. I wanted to talk to you about your thoughts on the situation in Arizona.
Yeah.
What I if you haven't been keeping up on it, there was a referendum. Pretty much the residents of in Arizona where the team is, I guess we're in Tempe. They're not going to put the arena there. So things are a little up in the air as far as the
Yeah.
future of the Arizona Coyotes. That's the very clean version. There's plenty of other shows and people that are keeping up with this better. But as far as the future of this franchise, what do you think should happen with the Arizona Coyotes?
Well, I think it should remain in Arizona because they have like some really dedicated fans out there. I feel terrible for them. They want to keep their team. And the Coyotes, look, they've been around for a decent amount of time now at this point, so I don't see why the team shouldn't exist there anymore. Now I do understand what the situation is right now. Obviously, they've been turned down a numerous amount of times now for building some sort of new arena somewhere. But my opinion on what should happen is hopefully they figure it out. I think that they should figure it out because um it would be tough on a lot of people who helped grow it, who are there now in the middle of it. I mean, like Clayton Keller was outspoken about how upset he was that he loves it there. He wants to stay there. Like so, I think it should stay. Now, what I will say about it too is like, look, this is a situation we're all too familiar with, right? Like the Lighthouse Project was turned down, and not only that, but like you can recount reading articles about okay, where are the Islanders going to be next? Because they're done on Long Island. Like it was signed, sealed, and delivered by most media. They're gone. So what I say to any Arizona fans that might be listening to this for some reason is, um, you know, continue to hold out hope because the Islanders were in Quebec, the Islanders were in Kansas City, the Islanders were relocated dozens of times. And I say that with air quotes around them. Yet they're now in a brand new UBS arena that is a 50-year lease. They're not going anywhere. They're staying on Long Island. So, hold out that hope that it could happen for you guys too, because there is that tidbit that they're staying in Arizona next season. They're playing at Mullet Arena again. And the Suns owner in Phoenix might be interested in taking them in, right? And of course, there would have to be renovations to the Phoenix Suns arena. I don't know the name of it offhand at this moment, but they would have to renovate it for hockey, and it's possible that they do. Nothing is set in stone here. It's just one of the many possibilities. But there was a time where the Islanders were in this situation, and now they're not. And I could see that happening for Phoenix too, or sorry, for Arizona too. And the last thing I'll say about why that is because it's like this is like Gary Bettman's baby. Like I think he really wants to make sure that they don't leave Arizona or the Glendale, area, the Phoenix area, wherever they're going to be. So, we'll see.
There's a few different sides for me. I think there's the financial in how is it providing revenue to the league that's, another second away from a potential CBA battle and hockey related revenue and all that. And I'm not going to begin to understand. I'm not going to pretend like I understand any of that, but I know it's an issue. Alan Walsh was outspoken about it today. He's a player agent, well-known player agent, and he has a podcast on SDPN if you're interested in that kind of thing, which I find interesting from time to time. There's also the people, as you said, James. They've done a really good job promoting the women and girls game, youth hockey in general, and that's really important. They spent a long time kind of building those programs to the point where you do have the Austin Matthews coming from Arizona and the Clayton Kellers, and I think there's one or two others, but that's kind of a big deal, especially from that area. So I'm not. I mean, and then there's the viability of the team in general. The owners obviously aren't putting any money into it other than what they have to. So it's interesting to hear that they were going to have all these different plans, and um, they haven't done that with the players. And this is for a long time when they had an arena, that they have been trying to get better, other than collect a million draft picks. So I don't really understand what the future is here, but it was a hot topic considering the vote earlier this week. So I wanted to make sure we touched on it. And honestly, I had something else that I wanted to make sure that I touched on regarding this, and um,
Yeah. Well, real
it
quick,
slipped my mind.
Craig Morgan just tweeted out a letter from the president and CEO of the Coyotes, Xavier Gutierrez, sorry. And it says, to our pack, while we're very disappointed Tempe voters did not approve the proposed entertainment district, we want to thank all of our loyal fans who supported the Coyotes over the years. Your loyalty is what makes our pack strong. During the 2023-24 season, the Arizona Coyotes will play at Mullet Arena. In addition, we will remain committed to Arizona and have already started re-engaging with local officials and sites to solidify a new permanent home in the Valley. We look forward to sharing more with you in the coming weeks. Seems optimistic.
I think that's what he needs to say. I don't. The
Sure.
NHL needs to not be involved in Arizona, and I think that's the problem. There are other cities that it could be viable in. I don't quite understand the return to a place like Atlanta. That's not exactly a Winnipeg. They're competing with college football and other things. And early in the NHL season, it's really hard to compete with that in that part of the country. That's
Yeah.
just the reality of it. I don't really understand if Quebec is actually a viable option. People have thrown
Well,
out.
I think even before Quebec as a viable option, I haven't seen many people talk about this, but I don't know why we're discounting the possibility of a second team in Toronto.
So that's what I was about to say. That's been thrown around as well, and that's what Alan Walsh, I think, doubled down on as far as the hockey related revenue part. Um, and I think that obviously helps the league, although there's a part of me that I don't think it really ultimately matters. I think the two sides are just gonna bash heads forever, especially while Bettman is involved. So I
Right.
think the team stays in Arizona as long as Bettman is there, and they have 4 more years that they can be at Mullet Arena. And best I know, Bettman also has 4 or 5 years on his deal that he just got. Now the longest serving commissioner in pro sports. Um, which is, I think we can go on and on about that. But I just wanted to bring this up. And you're right. Islander fans definitely have a place in their heart for this, having gone through it. And I think one of the things that I said about the opening of UBS Arena and the Islanders finally getting there was it was over. We didn't have to talk about it. It wasn't, even for all the good that there was at Nassau Coliseum, I didn't want that to be a storyline anymore, good or bad. I didn't want to hear about it because it just brought up so much baggage. Every single time the Islanders played in that arena, especially on national television, it was just a story, and it really didn't need to be. And I guess it got them coverage, and it was PR. And I'll let Chris Botta talk about that. He's the hockey PR expert, but as far as I'm concerned, I was just so happy for the UBS to happen, and frankly, even for Barclays to a degree, that it was okay. The Coliseum thing's over; they're staying. What we've been on this roller coaster forever, and as I said on another podcast, that was a guest on yesterday, uh, Weird Islanders with Lighthouse Hockey. Um, Islander fans will never know peace. But for right now, as far as that is concerned, there is a little bit of peace, and there was a brief moment when we kind of did, but it was seemingly short-lived as we kind of look back on that. But for Arizona, this has been a problem for a long time.
Yeah.
They had their spots, they had some moments. I just wonder what their future is, just kind of for everybody. Like the players have to worry about this. It's kind of hanging over their head. Who wants to
Yeah.
sign there long term? Like you're kind of setting this up for failure. It
Yeah.
until something actually happens, it's just going to be a loss on the league financially. Players aren't going to want to go there. They're going to be it's bad PR. They're going to continue to be the center of every single time somebody's going to get bought out. Any bad player, ship them off to Arizona, and that's just a narrative that's been going on for a very long time. So I wanted to make sure that we discuss that at least
Yeah. So just to
a
like
little
end
bit.
this segment, where like ideally what would be your pick for a relocation?
I mean, Quebec is exciting just because they seem to have success with Winnipeg and bringing back a Canadian team, and it's just interesting. You can bring back those jerseys. Um, People seem to really want it. I believe there's an arena. There's been an arena for a long time. I don't know how long those things stay up to date before they're not anymore.
Right.
Um, or I don't know if it's been used. I know absolutely nothing about Quebec City, and I don't know about the actual financial viability of a second team in that province. People are hockey crazy. Weirder things have happened. So that one strikes me, although it kind of messes with the East-West split. I could see Detroit going back to the West pretty easily, and that it wouldn't really take all that much to make that happen. They've done it before. People forget the Toronto Maple Leafs were the West for a long time,
Yeah.
um, which is how you had a Leafs Kings showdown in the conference final, the Western Conference final in '93. So it's interesting. I think that's there really aren't too many places. Again, Atlanta becomes a conversation. I don't really think about Toronto that much. I would go try it at least in Canada somewhere. I think that's interesting. I wonder how that gets, similar to Arizona. I wonder if it's a problem to get players to go play in Canada because they're going to be absolutely crazy. A team gets back there the first few years, the media is going to be nuts.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that, players are trying to get out of Canada still to go play in the States.
That's true.
And so I'm not sure. Some of the reasoning is because of the pandemic and some of the rules. And now that we're seemingly on the other side of this, I don't know that that's still like Kachuk saying that and wanting to go, getting out of Calgary was odd. Not to say that something like that could never happen again. We got into quite the mess here, and we
Yeah.
seemingly haven't learned all that much. But the different podcasts that we can discuss that, I'm sure. But so I don't really know how that would work out as far as going and doing that, or if an owner wants to go there. Does the NHL actually want it? That's an interesting pick. I don't know what the right one is. I don't know if they would put a second team in Toronto. Um, I saw Salt Lake, not anything serious. Salt Lake City. Um, that's at least interesting. I don't know what
Yeah.
like the hockey is like in Utah. It's that's a mixed bag as far as the state is concerned. I know people that live out there, and it seems beautiful, but yeah, I'm not sure about how hockey would work out that way. What about you? What's your
I part of me wants a second Toronto team just for the chaos, and
oh the comedy of it all, of course, and that's
yeah.
kind of where I've been lately.
But I'm intrigued by like a Houston. I'm intrigued by a Kansas City. I'm intrigued by, like you said, a Salt Lake
Houston could do
City.
it. Houston could do it. They
Houston
had
could do it.
I think that's and it's a cool city. I think it's a lot
Yeah.
like Dallas, although I've
Yeah,
only
and
been
I think that they
to
want to
Dallas.
do something like that. If I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken about who the owner was. It was either the owner of the Utah Jazz or maybe it was the Houston Rockets. I can't remember, but someone had tweeted to one of those owners and said, "Make this happen." And they replied, "It's already in motion." Like to at least be part of the conversation of expansion or relocation. So it'll be definitely interesting to see how it works out. I think that Houston would be a good option for sure. I
It keeps it
think
in the
Dallas does
region. Yeah.
well. Yeah, Dallas does pretty well, and I think Houston's even more of a bigger sports city than Dallas is. So yeah, I could see it working out well there.
Yeah, and there's some WHA history there, and it could be interesting. At least there's some more recent-ish hockey history there than say like Seattle. Um, by the better half of a century there. But yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure we touched on that at least a little bit. So I want to move on to Final Four. I think straight up, I want to know who you have in each of the series: Vegas, Dallas, Carolina, Florida. Who do you got?
Yeah, I picked Florida in 7. I picked Vegas in 7. I am fully on the Florida bandwagon, team of destiny. Matthew Tkachuk is the best player in the NHL. Let's friggin' go. I love Matthew Tkachuk. I think I said this already last week, but he's become my favorite player. And I'm yeah, give me that guy all day. I have all day for that guy.
Vegas, Florida. I mean, frankly, Vegas, anybody would be good. I was surprised. Well, someone had asked me, who do you have, Seattle or Dallas for game 7? And I said, I want Seattle to win, but I
Yeah.
think Dallas is going to take
Yeah.
it. And I'll say this, I just to like, we're bringing this to the Islanders a little bit. Watching that game, I I immediately thought the Islanders would have no chance against either one of these teams. They were just so fast. I don't know what it is about watching an Islander game that it seems like it's at quarter speed. But I'm watching that game, the way they're moving the puck around, the maybe it's the angle, maybe it's just like
Yeah.
where the camera is or something. But whenever I watch a game that's not an Islander game, they seem like they're moving twice as fast or 3 or 4 times as fast, and I can't wrap my head around it. I was like, "There's no the Islanders would never keep up in this game. They would get demolished." And which is, the Carolina series, they play pretty quick. That's exactly what happened. Like,
Yeah.
they were just so slow.
Can we talk about though real quick? I'm glad you brought up Seattle. I've been listening to who else but Elliot and Jeff all the time. And they were talking about how Seattle is such a good team, and there's no superstars though. They're just a group of you know really good middle six forwards. Is there a necessity for superstars if you have a plethora of middle six forwards like that? And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, is this not the Islanders? Like the way that we're describing this? Why is it
But
working
the
so
good
well
players are stepping up.
for
That's
right,
why.
well, that's the thing, right? Why is it working so well for Seattle? And I think, like, Jordan Eberle was an Islander, like, why is it not working for the Islanders, or why didn't it work for the Islanders? And I guess in a way it did when Jordan Eberle was an Islander, right? He was in a conference final, with them, so I guess you could say that it's similar. But do you think that, like, that's the limit, right? Second or third round, like, if you don't have those superstars? Because I mean, look, like, the Kraken couldn't get past the second round. The Islanders couldn't make it to the Cup final. Now, it depends on your definition of a star or a superstar. Because the Islanders did have Matt Barzell, but you look at the Kraken, and right now they don't have even someone of Matthew Barzell's caliber. In the star sense, right? I think Matty Beniers is going to be there one day in the star category, but I don't think he's there just yet. Do you think that they need these superstars to get over that hump?
I think, to steal a line from Herb Brooks, I don't really care if they're the best guys, if they're superstars. They need to be the right players. What we saw from this team, and really the core players that have kind of been around and had some success, with an asterisk, but some success, um, was that they didn't necessarily need that, but no, the whole team wasn't clicking at the same time. Some of these, a team like Seattle, everyone was kind of humming. Everyone was doing their job. The Islanders got all, in the better years, and their defense right now is the problem. right? The offense maybe could have held, and that strategy could continue to work. The defense failed them. They're not gonna with the way that they're set up. They don't have a Connor McDavid. They don't have the one player that's going to score you goals. But the whole team this year just wasn't clicking together at any one time. That those playoff runs the Islanders had, the entire team was clicking until it wasn't, and that's kind of what happens. And they ran into a really good team that um, was destined in a way. They had been kind of working their way up. They had to get over their own demons. Um, I think the Isles just need one or two more of the right guys. And I think Engvall was one of those right guys. I think getting him this season was a really good move by Lamoriello on the trade front, which he's really not failed to take advantage of and make a good deal. That has not been what his problem is. His problem has been in the free agent front. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And we've got way off track from the Final Four, but I don't mind. So no, I don't think a team needs the superstars. You just need a coach to be able to deal with that. I don't think Lambert is that player, that coach. Again, we'll talk about him in a little bit. I think that's ultimately the a little bit of the issue there. So I don't think it's a matter of superstars, right? It just you need the players that can do it, and then you need to create the systems around it to kind of make those players gel. For a long time, it was just a recipe with you didn't know what the ending was. That was what the last 2 years felt like. It seemed like the ingredients were good. They were all laid out, but together there was just something, and it's hard to tell. Was it the appliances? Was it the chef? Was it the ingredients themselves? Um, you can figure out who's who in the real life situation with the Islanders as far as who's the GM, coach, and the players. But there just something was not gelling here. Was the knife not sharp enough? The leadership on the team? Like I'm not exactly sure. This seems like it's a deeper problem than are the players good? This went, I think, deeper than that, which I think is what people are kind of pointing at in terms of either Lamoriello or Lambert. So for whatever that's worth. So you have a Vegas, Florida Stanley Cup. I think I would like to see that as well. If only to see Carolina go down and not be able to get over that hump again. Just because, again, for the comedy of it all, like having Florida make it, having Carolina not make it. I don't
For the
really care about
chaos.
Dallas. I don't have feelings about the Dallas Stars. Um, I could kind of take it or leave it. Vegas is just interesting. It's a good story. Um, and I think Vegas, Florida would be excellent. It'd be a lot of superstars and a lot of storylines and a lot of stuff going on. And
Yeah. If there's
an
any
unexpected series.
if there's any one person though I am rooting for, I know I picked Vegas to win that matchup, but I would love to see Joe Pavelski get a cup. That would be really cool. Especially because of
That's a
how well he's playing this deep into his career. Like he's just unreal. He does something every night that I'm just like, he's 38. Like we appreciate Zach Parise. Oh my God, Joe Pavelski is like twice the player right now. It's crazy.
I think that's a good story as well. Anytime a player that's been kind of um, on the journey for a real long time can finally get their cup, I think
Yeah.
that's good. And that might be the only positive thing I think I have about Dallas. Again, I think it's funny when they're kind of building around these players, and Ben and Sagan have just been there for so long trying to do it, and um, I don't know. I guess I just don't really care enough about the Dallas Stars. I do have a North Stars jersey, so I in
There you
theory
go.
should be rooting for them to make it. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Vegas, Florida is a good final. I think any one of these teams against any one of the other teams in the final would be exciting. So I don't think I think for the game this is good. I think it hits a lot of things for storylines in all four teams' cases. It's good for hockey fans. It's good for new fans. I think it would bring a lot of new people in, and it would just be really good. So we'll see how that checks out on the other side.
Nassibin Hockey is brought to you by DraftKings. Light the lamp during the hockey playoffs with DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can make a $5 bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. You can go to DraftKings Sportsbook right now and place a prop bet on Brock Nelson to score a goal, and there's a pretty good chance that you're going to hit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and sign up with code THPN. New customers can make a $5 hockey playoff bet and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for offer details. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Nassibin Hockey is also brought to you by Raycon. Let's face it, with coffee starting at $5, yes, even without any customizations, and our bank accounts somehow always depleting, we're officially entering a dupe session. Most products do the same thing, but they're priced differently solely based on the brand name. So a good duplicate, or dupe, is crucial for getting the highest quality at the best price. One dupe you definitely shouldn't sleep on: Raycon wireless earbuds. Raycon is premium audio at the perfect price point, so you can listen to what you want, when you want, without breaking the bank. With your groceries costing more and more every day, you have to find a way to save money somewhere, and why not do that with Raycon, a quality wireless earbud on the market for half the price. Raycon's mission is to prove that you shouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg for quality sound and essential smart tech listening features. You can get a pair and a spare and still pay less than you would with some of the other, more big-name tech brands out there. Raycon knows that this is an economy purchase. Every purchase needs to be perfect. Raycon offers buy now, pay later options. Right now, you can pay as low as $18 at checkout. They have an easy and free return guarantee. They offer 2 years of product protection insurance for just a few bucks. They offer free domestic shipping and flat fee international shipping. They also have over 50,000 5-star reviews. Some of my favorite features are the earbud tap functions, noise isolation, and awareness mode. So go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to score 15%. buyraycon.com/THPN.
So James, I wanted to read something from The Athletic, a Sean McIndoe article. It's centered on the Leafs, but it talks about what the Panthers did and didn't do last summer and during this season. And I think it has a lot of parallels with the Islanders. And this is going to set us up really for the rest of the episode. And we might just get stuck on this for a little bit, which is fine. I'm not really worried about the rest of the episode at this point. We have a couple segments in the beginning. We'll figure it out on the other side. I got some pushback on Twitter when I posted this, so I'm not sure you may have already read this article. I was kind of hoping you didn't, but I thought there was a particular part that was really interesting. So Sean wrote, "How did the Panthers do it? Well, let's talk about what they didn't do. They didn't run it back. They didn't stay the course. They didn't swear unwavering allegiance to the core, and they didn't fall all over themselves to preemptively squash any thoughts of impending changes before they could even get started. They didn't talk a big game about the results being unacceptable, while also making it perfectly clear that nothing significant would be any different. Instead, those 2022 Panthers started their summer with a controversial coaching change and highlighted it with one of the biggest trades in recent history. Not one that was focused on draft picks, prospects, depth around the edges. They traded away key pieces of the core. And in hindsight, they won the Matthew Tkachuk trade, apparently missing the memo all the rest of us got about how it's seemingly impossible to do that in today's NHL. To borrow a cliche, they changed the culture. They actually did it, as opposed to just mumbling about it. Now, I read this 100 times, which is why I read it out loud so well. I pre-read it before the show, but I've also read it a number of times over the last couple days. What's your immediate reaction to reading that? And I think there's
Yeah.
two ways I think we can have this discussion. There's the fanatic way, being a fan, and that reaction, or there's more of the measured approach. And we typically take that one, right? But this got me, I got a visceral response from reading this. So feel free to take it however you want on this part of the show. But I really wanted to make sure we talked about this.
Yeah. He's right, in the sense that they shocked the culture and they, didn't pledge allegiance to their core, this, that, and the other thing. So yeah, I could definitely see that, right? They definitely won the Matthew Tkachuk trade.
Don't think about
Is
this
this
as
like
far as the Panthers. It's not about what he's done right. It's the parallels to the Islanders, right?
yeah, right.
What
So
things that we've heard before and
the
essentially
thing
our
is,
response. And that's where I
yeah,
think that's where our response is going to be different here.
so the thing is, right, like the obviously year after year, and continuing to run it back, it's been all about the core, right? Fourth line, Anders Lee, Matthew Barzell, Brock Nelson, like the core. Um, you know, but in a way, I kind of feel like the Islanders attempted to do the same thing. They just didn't do it as fast as the Panthers did, because Anthony Beauvillier was part of the core, right? Aturatu was supposed to be part of the core. They traded a first round pick. I feel
Again,
like I feel like the Bo Horvat trade was a very light version of what the Panthers did to get Kachuk. It was like their attempt to bring in their impact, right? So to shake it up, and to we all had Anthony Beauvillier pegged to be a guy that could be traded, but to see his like name actually go was a bit shocking. So the Islanders kind of did shock their own system in trading a core piece. Um, they just did it too late, right? The Panthers did it with Kachuk, and they had a couple of months to figure all that shit out. The Islanders did it at the trade deadline. Well, a couple months before the trade deadline, but they had significantly less time than the Panthers to figure it all out. Now, not consequently, but ironically, from from the trade deadline on, the Islanders and the Panthers had very similar points percentages, like high 600s.
I think they were both 633.
It might have been it might have been the same
It's
exact
like
points
really,
percentage,
really close.
really close. So ironically, it that's how it worked out down the stretch. But it makes you wonder, you know, could they have been that team all along? So, um, yeah, I think that it's well stated by McIndoe, and it's probably something the Islanders should have realized a lot sooner than they did. But 30 other teams in the NHL also didn't do this, right? Or 29 other teams, if you include Calgary, didn't do this, right? Didn't shock their system. And you could look at some of the teams that have struggled. Even teams right now that didn't make the playoffs, like look at the Capitals. They kind of fall into this too, where they're keeping their core together because Alex Ovechkin is still there, and they still need to win with him, right?
The Penguins.
The Penguins, right? Bringing back Malkin, Letang, and Crosby. So there are plenty of other teams who fall under this category. The Islanders being one of them. They tried to do it themselves, but it was too late. And they ultimately just squeaked in where maybe they could have been in better position, and who knows, maybe still be in the playoffs right now, like the
I
Panthers.
don't think their positioning and getting into the playoffs has anything to do with that they played like horseshit against the Canes.
Oh yeah, that too. But
That's what I'm saying. Like
again,
it's not about it's not
acquire.
about the stretch and all this other stuff too. Like I think that's talking around the problem.
No, but my my main point from all that is acquire Bo Horvat sooner, get all that shit out of your system. Like maybe he goes dry on that pointless streak in January and not down the stretch when it was important at
I
you
think
know the
I'm
most.
I'm also thinking about this in with a much wider lens, right? I don't think yes, and this is part of the response that I received on Twitter that trading Bavillier, another first round pick, and Ratu for Horvat is not running it back. But I think in you essentially swapped Bavillier and Horvat in the lineup. And I'm not expecting Horvat to continue to contribute, or rather not contribute in the way that he has so far. But that's not exactly the large change that it doesn't look like, to me anyway, it doesn't look like that. It looks like they just swapped a player for another player that they thought would work better with Barzell. That's
Yeah.
that's staying the course, right? And that's Horvat is not a fringe player too, right? Like I don't want to mistake that. And I don't think Bavillier was either, but he certainly acted like it, which is a problem, right? You are good but aren't playing good is you got to go. You can't stick around. So I think there's something there, but it's not as big of a deal as folks were making it. I still see it as I part of it was part of this quote, or rather the thing that I read. Um, they weren't focused on depth around the edges. And that's essentially what all that Lamoriello put himself in a position to do this summer. You're playing around the edges. Yes, you can get a first line winger, but you have your pieces in place on that line already in Horvat and Barzell. So you're just is it a depth player or a fringe player? No, but it's an additional piece there,
Yeah.
right?
I, I
It's
also
and if
I
you're,
also think of it
I think something big would mean trading another what you consider a core piece, which I think is almost impossible, and we'll talk about that in a second, to get that winger. That is a significant change. That and actually having some roster turnover in a very big way. It's as if it was like if you traded Anders Lee and something for that player. That's not going to happen. I'm not even suggesting that's a good idea, but that would be the type of thing that I'm talking about where you're looking at it's exactly, and this to the point of the article, it's what the Leafs have chosen not to do. They said
right.
we're going to stick with this and we're going to work around the edges. And the Islanders have largely done that. It's always been, oh, Engvall was such a good middle six player to get, and oh, Pajot and Fashing, and Pajot not so much this year, but in general, like you're talking about these players instead of where the fuck is Matthew Barzell other than
Right.
Nelson in the whole lineup, and really that second line, which could easily have been their first line in Engvall, Nelson, and Palmieri. Are you kidding? That's what we were relying on in the playoffs. Like I said, that has nothing to do with how you get in. So all this resonated
Right.
because this seemed like it was a Lamoriello quote. I read it all in his Providence, Rhode Island accent, or wherever the hell he's from, and that slow drawl that he has, and each thing. But oh, it's the culture, and it's the this, and we like what our players, and holy shit, it was. I read it so many times, it was just like nauseating thinking about it in terms of the Islanders and how we're about to go into another summer where a lot of people do not believe anything's going to happen. And I joke with Joe Buono, Isles Fix. He's like, I don't think this is the year. Some money's going to come off the books next year, and some contracts and this and that. Like the cap's going to go up. And I was like, okay, good. Let's pack it in. I'm super happy. I think I sent this to you. It's like, oh, we don't have to do the show for a whole year.
Yeah.
I'll pack up my microphone. I'll move. I don't have to unpack it this summer. I won't watch any of the games. I have so much time on my hands. What am I going to do with myself so that I can just show up here next May? We can have the same conversation. Are you kidding? And this isn't
Well,
calling out Joe, but that's the
no.
sentiment. And like, if we
The
just
sentiment,
move
right.
forward, if we just move forward with that as our mindset, this, like I said, I joked about earlier, we will never know fucking peace because this is
The
it. We're just like this is so masturbatory, and there's just like no escape. They're just in this cyclical hellscape, making the same insane decisions over and over.
so the
I
thing
yield
that
my
comes to
time to you.
mind no, the thing that comes to mind for me though, regarding like the Kachuk trade, and I think it's underrated. It's like an underrated factor that is just I think abundantly true. The Panthers not only made this shocking trade for the player on the ice in terms of what he can do as far as filling the net and such, they changed the culture of the team because they didn't have any pricks before Matthew Kachuk, right? Their whole team was speed and skill, and Kachuk is definitely those things too, but they didn't have any pricks. And now they put one in the lineup, and now all of a sudden they're really friggin' hard to play against. Like I said this last week that I know Barkov is the captain, but like there's serious debate as to who's running that team because Kachuk is not just, you know, the vocal leader, but on the ice, he's defending players. He's getting under the skin of opponents, and it's just like they have their prick, and it's just changed the whole culture around them. Um, and I don't know
And
what
I'll
that
say
looks
this.
like for the Islanders. Like I don't know what the parallel is for them, right? Because they have pricks, right? They have their Martin, they have their Sezikis, they have their Clutterbuck, they have their Ross Johnston, they have their Fashing if you need him to be one. They have pricks. It's not that they need one of those. It's what do the Islanders not have that they can bring in that would shock their system and maybe give it a good reboot?
I think Lee and Palmieri try to be that. They're just
Yeah,
not
that them too. Yeah.
that type of jerk. Palmieri maybe a little bit more than Lee. Lee is a tough dude, but he's not a jerk. He's hard to play against, but he's not annoying to play against. I don't think Palmieri is either. I think he tries. I think he's the little Long Island in him. I think he really tries to kind of run around out there a little bit, but he's also trying to score goals and um he's not always silky, but he gets the job done. Every once in a while he pulls out the move and a little bit of flash. Palmieri gets it done. I think the props, the biggest part of that Kachuk trade, and I don't even know who the GM is for Florida.
Uh,
I
uh,
can't remember.
is it
It's not
Zito?
still Bill Zito. Is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that they sold high on Huberdeau, regardless of what both teams were going through with their respective players, Kachuk and Huberdeau, on contracts and how much time was left, etc. They sold high on him. He had the most points, whatever wing he plays, for his position ever. And essentially what they said was, we bet he will not fucking do that again. And they shipped his ass off. They had to sell low on Bavillier and then package a first round pick and Ratu to get Horvat. They've never taken the opportunity to say, wow, this was really good. There was a player recently that had that, right? Where they were, oh, okay, they're having a good season. We should trade them. A player not named Varlamov, for that matter. Because as we discussed last episode, there are zero options for backups that are even remotely the same. And I think even Kerr said a 3x6, $3 million over 2 years or 3 years would be pretty on the money. And I think we said that last episode. At least I did. I'll take credit for that. But the Islanders, like when they had players they could sell high on and trade up, essentially, or get a player that would better fit the system, as Sean wrote here, they just doubled down on it.
Yeah.
They didn't say, and I don't know what that means exactly, but I think it's about hard decisions. I think doing what you did, if you're a Panthers fan and you're like, you didn't try to Huberdeau, he did 100 bazillion point. Like, are you kidding? And then now you look at it and you go, oh my God, wow, yeah, Kachuk is, running this team, as you said, and he's the glue.
Yeah.
He's stirring the drink, whatever metaphor you want to use. And the Islanders like don't have that. I think it's part of like moving forward, some of your jam guys, as they say, they really do need to be like a Bo Horvat, right? He needs to score goals, but he needs to be out there kind of hitting. And he does that when he gets off his game. You could tell when he's having a bad game, which were a lot of them going down the stretch. He was just hitting. He was going out there. He just like he didn't really have a whole lot of speed. Whatever. He didn't have that jump, but he was hitting. Um, I don't expect Barzell to be that, but I do expect him to change his game. He cannot, and the coach cannot allow him to be the only one that's doing this something different. And he needs to go out there and play the north-south game that everyone else is playing. And honestly, if for as good as Engvall was, he sure as shit is not that player, that mean guy with an edge either. Right? He's big. That was his problem
Yeah.
the entire time in Toronto. And he was good with the Islanders, right? But it's kind of saying, okay, he was part of what we needed. Is there somebody different that could bring what he brought plus an edge or plus whatever your X factor is that you need on this team? I know chemistry is a huge part of it. So that's where I
Yeah.
think there's there's hard decisions that the team needs to make. I can't even begin to think about what that might be, which is, and I think there's a step before that. And that's, I think, a good segue here into the next part, because I know we don't have a ton of time, but what clarity, because we're still waiting for Lamoriello at the time of this recording. We're still waiting for Lamoriello or Lambert to say anything. What clarity will them speaking actually give us? What are people hoping he says? We have some historic evidence of nothing. What are we
We
waiting? What are
also
we waiting? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we also have evidence of change. Like last year at this time, I mean, it already happened at this time, but last year when there was a short period of silence, it was a major change. And that was Barry Trotz was out and Lane Lambert was in. Um,
And there's a
do I
little
expect
delay on that. There wasn't one right after the other. It was like a
right.
week or so in between.
Right, but it was already done by this point, is what I mean, right? Like we got the announcement that Barry Trotz was out, and then a week later, to the day, Lane Lambert was in. So, like, I'm not saying that I think that this is or this is like something that I've heard or whatever, but like, is it out of the question that I don't know, like, does Lamoriello just transition to president and someone takes over as GM? I don't know.
My fingers are
Um,
crossed for that middle ground. I was going to bring that up, but and I think that is clarity, and I thought of that, and I say I was going to bring it up, but I thought of that earlier, and I forgot. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's about as much clarity, but that's not even anything. Like, okay, so the president moves up. Maybe he decides ahead of time as he's hiring the GM. Okay, you're keeping the coach, which never works. New GM is always going to want to bring in his own person. Um, that does that provide clarity, or is that just an answer to an immediate question? That I
yeah.
don't know that it provides any clarity on the team or the direction. I expect him to come out and say, read exactly what the Sean McIndoe article was. I believe in this group. We're going to get better where we can, and we have some deals to work out. That's going to be the extent of it. That just tells us fucking nothing. That tells us
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely nothing about right.
the
And then we're
history
going to find
supports
out in
that.
August.
So,
Yeah, and we're going to find out in August that the clarity was re-signing Parise and Engvall and Varlamov, and that
yeah.
the six
It's
that
painful actually to hear.
they didn't bring back Mayfield. They're going to try to one of their young kids. They're going to have some PTO guy as a 7th D and or Grant Hutton or something. Um, this reminds me more of the Garth Snow years than it does the beginning of the Lamoriello tenure.
We
the,
are
the
hitting
offseason
the
again.
red button at this point of the episode.
Right. It's just I don't really understand. Yeah, whatever. It's just I'm taking this as like the fanatic approach, and perhaps it's less logical, but I don't. History tells us that the summer is not when he pounces. Now I'll say this, and I said this on other episodes. I'll give Lamoriello credit, and this is probably he would say this and to be rewriting history a little bit, but if he said, "Hey, the deal we got for Horvat to get Horvat did not present itself last summer, whether that was a UFA to get a player of that caliber and his age was not available last summer, and we did not feel at that time it was worth making any kind of deal, signing UFA or making a trade. I'll take Horvat over Kadri any fucking day." So the patience and that in a vacuum is fine, right? But going into the season, there was just immediate problems, and they put themselves in a bad position even by the time they got Horvat, that they needed to do something Herculean on top of then a Barzell injury, and then the defense becoming a ghost, or pylons. That's kind of what I'm worried about. They're actually at some point, because we saw the back-to-back series, we're like, man, they are just a Bo Horvat away and one less injury, and they really could have done it. And then they didn't hit pause. They like took a step back last year, 2 years ago. And this year, even though they made the playoffs, they took another step back. The only thing we learned is that this group is stuck right now. Something needs to really be shaken up here. I don't know what that looks like. I also want to talk about Lambert, and if Lamoriello
Yeah.
stays, I want to revisit our thoughts on this. I actually can't remember what we said. Someone call us out. Do you think Lambert's there if Lamoriello's there?
Yeah.
No chance. Like he's back. You don't think there's a
No,
chance
I
that
think
that?
yeah, no, I think he's back.
Yeah, I was afraid you say that too. I'm not. As a voice, I'm not seeing that. Again, that's an easier shakeup. I don't know who it is. I don't know if Laviolette is the right answer or somebody else. But I don't know. I don't think the voice is Lambert. I don't think that he's the person that's gonna. If you can't shake up the players, you have to shake up the approach, and that's really the only card you can play. We questioned this last summer. Is the voice new enough? I think we have pretty clear evidence that it was not. He could not get out of this group what they're capable of. That Barry
Yeah,
Trotz did.
I'd agree with that, and you're right. Like there are some pretty viable options out there right now, like a Laviolette. Um, I don't know. I correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Lamoriello at some point late in the season give him the vow of confidence that he did all he could with the group he had, and
But he's
stuff
supposed to
like
say
that?
that. So much
Yeah,
of this
sure,
stuff, like
but he could
I
really
don't, I
mean it.
take it. Oh man, someone is he there? Blink if he's off camera.
Ah,
Yeah, I mean, what is he gonna say? What is I don't the players are gonna say that too. We heard Tavares say stuff like that. We've heard it from every angle of the organization. I want the team to stay here. We are, everyone said a different version of that. It doesn't mean anything. The players say that. They know something's going to change. They know something needs to change. Barzell was really the only one that said, we got to stop backing in the playoffs. We got to be better than that, which is what they've done. Even on those long playoff runs, they backed in the playoffs. They were not playing well. I've said that like the last 4 episodes in a row. So if Lamoriello's around, Lambert's around, I think we often talk about some of the fringe players, Martin Clutterbuck, in terms of saving money on the cap, and how good players like, and I said this before, Fashing and Parise, and you're dealing around the edges here. What does a team need to do to actually get some deals done? because you need a deal for Wahlstrom, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on that deal because he's an RFA. But in order to get that done and bring back a Varlamov and maybe an Engvall and bring in a defenseman and bring in your first line winger, what do you do? What actually makes sense? Because I think the immediate
Yeah.
reaction is buy out Josh Bailey or trade him, right? Okay, the latter, of course, it'd be great. Shoot him into the sun. Fantastic. You have to make that deal, and he's not an asset anywhere.
No,
It's
I
good that
do
he
think.
makes $3.5 million in real dollars, and he has a higher cap hit, so a 4 team may be interested. You're still not just going to take him, right? You
I,
gotta maybe. I mean, maybe if they don't have to trade anything back, that's been part of it. Future considerations, spread out around the league, but I don't think you can buy out Bailey. I don't think that makes enough sense.
and that's why well, look,
So
if
there
they
was a
can't
lot
trade
there.
him, they're no, it's okay. If they can't trade him, they're buying him out. But I think there is a chance they can get him off the books via trade, whether it's at full salary or if there's a little bit retained. Um, I think Chicago winning the lottery changes a lot of things for them. Like they're gonna need some veterans in there, and they might be interested in bringing in a Bailey.
I
If
think
it,
Kurz wrote something like that.
okay, yeah. So maybe that's an option. Where do we always dump our players? Arizona, right? Like, what? Maybe he's an option there. So, I think there is a path to getting him off the books, especially like you said, because the 3.5 in real dollars is probably intriguing to some teams. Especially if he can provide like 30 points on the third or fourth line. So, he did that last year. He could probably do it somewhere else. Um, so, that opens up $5 million automatically, which probably gets spent on your own players anyway. But yeah, you
Not
said what is
fully.
a
I mean, I think that's 11 million altogether because they have like a
yeah,
little over
yeah,
6. So
right.
yeah, I mean that Varlamov could be 2 or 3. I'm voting on 2.5. Frankly, I mean, if I add my druthers, 3 is fine. I don't know what Engvall gets. Parise's league min. Um, I think you also need to figure out Martin Johnson Clutterbuck. You need to do something there. That's
Yeah,
that's quite a bit of money added up. Almost four
that's the
million
thing.
dollars.
Like, I don't know what they're doing with Ross Johnston. Like, why is he taking up $1.1 million against the cap? Matt Martin, look, he had a really good despite the team success, Matt Martin played really well. Cal Clutterbuck, um, like played really well down the stretch, but is he gonna hold up? Like, is his body gonna give out again? Like we
All right,
wonder
when
if
you say
he's
really well, what do you mean? Because I think there's a huge debate among I think these are
well,
really
I
good
mean, he
examples
played his role really
about
well. Like he's not
because
he's
they
not
were
gonna provide.
terrible defensively, did not provide offense. So that other
Yeah, but
than
that's
hitting
a
and
that's a
maybe like
unit problem.
energy,
That's a unit problem, right? That's not a Matt Martin problem. He wasn't a liability on the ice. His line maybe didn't always play well together, but he was not the problem. I think he was pretty okay defensively. I think
I mean,
he
if the
played
unit,
his role.
if 2/3 of the unit are, I don't know how to say this. I don't think what you said made sense. So like, who's the problem? The line doesn't work anymore, and 2/3 of them don't look like they're playing very well at times.
Well, no, I think the
Is it
problem is
2/3
that
the line or is it the unit? They
well,
make up
the thing
most of
is
the
the thing
unit.
is right, it's hard to define who that line was because there was Clutterbuck out for stretches. Tzizikas was playing many different roles and wore many different hats. He was on the first line, he was on the third line. So, like, Martin was playing with a number of different players on the fourth line, and, like, those things matter. Like, the chemistry wasn't able to form, wasn't able to build, and, like, Martin, Tzizikas, and Clutterbuck can probably close their eyes and play full shifts together and know where each other is gonna be, whereas they didn't have that luxury this season because they were just split up so often. So
I think that's one of those shakeup things that you could easily do,
right.
is just simply don't bring that back. And as you said, if we made t-shirts, we would do it. Everyone in their rightful place. because
Yeah.
we need to be able to push some players in the lineup. I don't think having Fashing and Parise in the
Right.
lineup is a bad thing.
So
It's a bad
one
thing when it's your
player
third fucking line.
one player that's been circulating in the possibility of coming to Long Island and being an Islander is someone who I watched very closely all year this year. Um, Miles
Miles
Wood.
Wood.
I think he's perfect. He's a perfect fourth liner for the Islanders. He's stupid fast, like the fastest guy on the Devils. He definitely utilizes his body and he's got some skill. Like he can score a couple goals. So like you put that next to Zizekas and be rid of and I don't want to say be rid of because like he's a fan favorite, but it's okay to make Matt Martin a 13th forward and not play him every night. Providing
I don't think
that.
neither of them. I think Clutterbuck needs to retire. Martin needs to
Yeah,
something.
I mean, like if he does, that helps. That's $2.5 million off the books, but that has to happen, right? Martin could be a 13th forward. I mean, I don't know. Can you trade
Then
Ross
that
Johnson's
Johnson goes in
1.1
the center.
million? Like, whatever, bury it, whatever you have to do. Now, as far as you said, what does a Wallstrom deal look like? Um, I mean, like it was a mixed bag for his first couple months of the season, right? He was really good, then he fell off, and then he was like kind of picking it back up again. I think he signed him to a year. Signed him to 1 year at like 2 million bucks
Show,
and say,
show me deal.
show me. Yeah, show me. Let him score 35 fucking goals next to somebody, hopefully.
You're just
And
willing that to happen. You're just
yeah,
putting the
I mean,
energy. You've been doing that for 2 years.
if it's not with the Islanders, it's gonna happen somewhere. Like, I'm not kidding. That shot is too good to not score 30 goals consistently every single year. If it's not with the
He's just
Islanders, it's
not
gonna
putting
happen
himself in
somewhere.
the right. He's not putting himself in the right position.
Yeah,
I could
I
see
mean,
a little bit of
sure.
what Trotz was saying. Didn't he have like 6 points? He had 5 goals this year. Granted, I don't know how many. I can't remember how many games he played. But it's
Yeah, it
not
was
like
something like
he played
34 or something like that.
5 goals in 34 games.
I don't know if he had 5 goals, but let me hold on, I have it right here. He played I know I have it
He had
right.
16 points in 35 games. He had 7 goals.
Is Oliver Wahlstrom not on this list because he's hurt, maybe?
I just told you what it was.
What was it? Sorry. Oh,
seven
7
goals
goals,
in
16
35 games.
points in 35 games. Okay, yeah. Yeah, not great.
No, and I guess he was on pace to beat last year, but that also wasn't good. He's played
He played 20 goals last year, no?
160, but he's only scored 32 goals in 161 games. He's not even a half a
He had
point a game
13.
player.
But I think he had 20. I don't remember.
Like I think that's part of it. And then he didn't really he can had 3 points in 5 playoff games a few years ago. Look, he's so young. He's
Yeah.
still so young. And there's really not any young players that the Islanders can kind of bank on now that Ratu is not going to be there. So they kind of they do need to show me, but this is part of like they're also crossing their fingers here and praying that
Yeah. But so and
that
this
he
is why
shows
I
up.
say you sign him to a 1-year deal and you say prove it.
Do you just let I don't know how the lines work without Engvall and adding in a righty back into the lineup, but do you just not sign Engvall and you have Wallstrom and go from there?
I know a lot
If
of
you're
people
not
want to
going to do
sign
a whole
him.
lot.
I know a lot of people want to sign him, but I'm worried that like committing to Engvall and hoping to have him replicate over a full season what he kind of maybe caught in a bottle and did down the stretch of a playoff run doesn't get replicated and he gets paid, let's just say it's 4x4. That's going to be so tough if it doesn't work out.
Uh,
You
I don't
have
you know
how
what?
many
I don't disagree with that.
how many of these players do they already have that if they pay him 4x4 and it doesn't work out, you're just even deeper in that hole. So I'm okay. Like I do I th- do what I can't even articulate this sentence
Because we
because I'm
did
just
talk
my
about
mind
this.
is
So this is
exploding at the
tough. I
fact that
know
this
we're
could be a possibility. Do you commit to the 4x4 and hope it continues to be the way it was? it's hard. Do I want it to happen? Yeah, of course, but do I think it will? I'm skeptical.
It's interesting because the way that we spoke about it a couple weeks ago when you said who stays and who goes and whatever me that was last week, um, was that I think we both agreed that we wanted Engvall back
Yeah,
or that he would be
but
back.
that
Maybe not that we
Engvall,
want him back, but that Engvall and I think I think it's right. Considering what I said earlier about the Panthers sold high on Huberto. They can't trade. They can trade his rights, I guess, for I don't know what you actually get for the rights of somebody before the draft next month, but I think you got out of Engvall what he helped his own next deal. It just does not necessarily need to be with the Islanders.
correct. Yeah,
So I think that might be somewhere where we can kind of land here.
yeah,
I do like the show me deal with Wallstrom. I agree with that. I think that helps both sides. And if it really doesn't work out next season, they'll get a bunch of cap relief one way or another. If things
yeah.
don't work out this summer, if we're back here next summer having the exact same conversation, because nothing really
You'll
changed this year, at least they'll have the opportunity to kind of make those changes next summer. And so I want to end the show with this question: um, Does the fact that it's a very shallow UFA class and more of a trade market kind of summer benefit the Islanders and Lamoriello?
I see the player you have in the notes.
Of who to shop?
Yeah.
Well, no, this isn't someone I think that they should shop. I think it's just
No,
been talked about. I
it
also
has been
have in
talked
there
about.
I also have in there that he has 3 years at $5 million left, 4.5 million in actual money.
Yeah.
M dash no way. As in there's no way they're gonna be able to do that without it costing them a ton of money. So I'm saying that
So
I put that in there as that is not a viable option for the team.
I don't think it's a viable option either to trade. We're talking about JJ Pajot, by the way. I don't think we named the player for those who might not be up to date on the contract situations. But um, we're talking
No,
about
I expect
Pajot
everybody
and
no, we're gonna be thin veil of, we're gonna gatekeep this. You go Google it. It is free.
there's
Just
a
Google
quiz at
this
the end of the show, by
information
the
and
way. You better be prepared or you friggin' fail. But Pajot is the player we're talking about. And there's been a lot of speculation as to if the Islanders are going to shop him. I think he's on like an athletic trade board. The only thing for me is that, like, look, if you trade Pajot, depending on what you get back, you're creating another hole, right? You're saying, okay, we got to move Matthew Barzell back to the center position again. Suddenly, we have a 2/3 of a first line again, or even 1/3 of a first line
I
and
mean,
Anders Lee,
go find a third line center.
right?
Like that's not,
So,
it doesn't need to be a $5 million third line center. I think that's the point. Or
right.
move Zizekas up and get a fourth line center. Right? Zizekas is
So,
more than capable of that.
yeah. So your question though was, does it benefit the Islanders that it's such a weak UFA class? Yeah, I could see that being a reality, right? Um, hockey deals might be what goes down this summer for a lot of GMs because they don't necessarily love what's out there via free agency. So,
As I'm
yeah, I,
saying,
I
for
could see it.
Lamoriello,
Yeah,
that's where he's found success, and he's
yeah,
clearly been he's been hesitant to pull the trigger on some UFA.
yeah,
That's the only way I can break that down is there was something holding him back and or holding people back on both sides of the equation. It just didn't get done. And he's been, I don't want to say trigger happy, but very comfortable on that side of the coin with trades.
yeah. Yeah, I would agree. And you know what, you wonder how it might work out. Like, what is the target this summer? Is it another winger? I have this feeling that they need a puck moving defenseman.
I think
Um,
it's both. It's
yeah, maybe it
interesting.
is both. And if you're, if you're acquiring a winger though, like how are you doing that, right? Are you shipping out defensemen? Are you shipping out centers? Are you creating more holes? It has to be the perfect storm for them. Like, although it would benefit them, it would need to be the perfect situation for them to fill all those holes that they would be creating for themselves, and be able to ice a team where they don't have to put Barzell back on at the center position because I do think his future is a winger and on Horvat's side, right side. So I guess we'll see. And maybe that's the clarity we get. Kind of circling back to the beginning of the show that we get from Lamoriello when he finally does speak. Like there needs to be changes, and we know that, and we're going to do that this summer. Maybe that's the clarity.
Some of it is going to be not bringing back players.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at Kyle Dubas in Toronto, where he said, like, look, if I do come back as general manager, this is the first time he's ever been outspoken about the possibility of breaking up that core four. And hey, maybe one of those guys is an option. Who knows, right? Maybe,
Again, that's so I say that as just I think some teams, some players need to just go, or they need to change the scenery.
yeah,
I think for the Islanders, that's kind of some of it too, and that's where
right. So
an RFA like Wallstrom could be a piece.
yeah,
Before a deal gets done, he might be at risk at just being one of those leverage players. I'm not saying that the Islanders are going to make a trade with Toronto necessarily, but some of it's going to be, and I think that would be a shakeup move, right?
right,
Not bringing back Engvall, trading Wallstrom, not bringing back Mayfield, um, moving on from Bailey fully, and not just having him in the press box, and so he's not an option at all. Um, Clutterbuck going out to pasture, having Martin as the 13th forward. Like I think there's just some like that would be change.
yeah,
That would be not committing to stuff that even worked in the short term, right? Like Engvall is obviously not part of the core, but in the short term he worked. And then, like you said, lightning in a bottle. Being able to just move on from that and not have that get sucked into the current narrative would be a big change. That would constitute something actually happening and saying we have to make room for the big thing. We can't do both. We're looking at other teams, and you can't do what Toronto's doing, but you also can't do what the Islanders are doing. Toronto they're very top heavy. The Islanders, as we've joked a million times, have 3-second lines
yeah,
or even 4-second, whatever. Probably more like four third lines at this point because of the way they played in this playoffs. But you want to move on from that's clearly not working either. You got to move on from that. You got to do some shit.
yeah,
So if this is the beginning of those changes, I'm here for it, right? And I think that's what people are saying. Some people had tweeted at me that I normally don't hear from because I don't tweet from my personal account about the Islanders all that much. But people were saying they're clearly not running it back. And I said, as long as that continues to happen, I can believe you. But one trade, you have to give up something to get something. I don't know that constitutes as an actual retool and things happening. I think that was just a good trade.
yeah.
So I think it's got to be more than one thing. Yeah, no matter how I look at that, I can't see it as more than that right now.
So
There's no
William
evidence.
Nylander to the Islanders confirmed is what you're saying.
I mean, interestingly, I think he's one of the players that it could make sense to try to go after. I don't know what it takes because
Takes a
on the
lot.
one hand, he is a huge asset. On the other side, he's like the only thing that Dubas has the leverage to trade. Rather,
Yeah,
I'm
he's
sorry, not
making
the leverage to
like
trade.
6 million and change,
He
and
doesn't
he's a
have Luke
40 goal
Dubas.
scorer.
If Dubas is going to make a trade for anybody, with anybody, and include Nylander, he doesn't have a lot of leverage now. Because Nylander is a valuable player, but he's about the only player that can get traded easily because of his cap hit and because he's an actual asset. He's good. He showed up in these playoffs.
Yeah.
So,
Or you trade Marner because he can get you something back in return, and you open up a lot more cap space.
it may be 2 out of the 4 of those. So it's either Marner or Matthews that go, and Tavares stays, and Nylander. So it's Nylander and Matthews or Marner. You can't move Tavares.
No, that's not movable.
I don't think that's movable, and he has to accept it. Like it's just It's not impossible, but I don't think I wouldn't bet on that. For Marner and Matthews is a different conversation. And I
We'll
don't.
have those conversations when we get
Yes, we're
clarity.
gonna have those conversations.
I think by the time we do our next episode, we'll have a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, and
So
let's talk about that.
yeah, we'll talk about that then. I'll leave you with this closing quote from Patrick Mahomes, John. Patrick Mahomes says, "The Kansas City Coyotes has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" At NHL,
Damn.
Patrick Mahomes is also a minority owner of the Kansas City Royals. Fun fact, if you didn't know. So that's
Interesting.
interesting. All these names getting thrown in the hat for Ottawa, Ryan Reynolds, Snoop Dogg, The Weekend. Now suddenly Patrick Mahomes is saying, "Hey, look at me. I have money too."
It could be that. It could just be him having fun, but I
Could
think
be.
again, Team Chaos. They may. I don't know. I can't remember anything about the Kansas City situation. But we'll talk about the next couple episodes or the next few episodes rather. Um, I'm traveling the next couple weeks, so I think we're gonna take a little bit of break the rest of this month. Unless something happens, James will step in. I think I'll be able to kind of jump on. I'm in town the next 2 Wednesdays, but I'm traveling to get back here both of those. So I was hoping to not have to get my life together and hop on and pay attention to things. I will if I need to. And next week might be easier than the week after. So fingers crossed, it's just silence and business as usual, and
Yeah.
nothing happens. But we may have just jinxed it. So I dug my own grave there. But when we return in June, our plan is to go division by division and talk about trades, talk about UFAs, RFAs, who the Islanders could actually go after, what it would take, and what it would take could mean who do they give up from their roster in a trade, or who can they just not resign? Some of those things might
Right.
be, oh wow, we can't resign Varlamov at this number, or Engvall at this number, or even Parise. Like I think some of those things actually come into play when you're, um, if you can't move a Johnston and a Clutterbuck
Yeah.
and a Martin, well then you can't bring back Parise. You also have a Fashing that's back. So there's a lot that's going to go into those conversations. We're going to do some homework.
Oh yeah.
I don't think we've chosen the order, but the goal of this is that we have 4 episodes leading up to July 1st.
The
The draft will
frenzy.
be in there, so we may have some things,
Extra
some
content.
direct aisles things to kind of talk about there, or maybe an extra episode that just does that.
Probably some
Um,
resignings too if they choose to announce them.
some resignings, although that seems like an August thing, which is odd. Um, we may have a guest on or two in that time period. Um, but that's our schedule for the next little bit. So if you don't hear from us, we're on a little bit of a break as we end May. It's been a long season. Um, and we'll finish up season 4 before July 1st, with some breakdowns and I don't know, some galaxy braining. We'll have a little bit of fun with it, being that there's usually not a whole lot of Islanders news this time of year. Any closing thoughts here?
No, that's it. I'm loving all of these big names coming into hockey because more celebrity star power in hockey means more green for everyone.
I think that's right. It's definitely, but although I do think Ryan Reynolds, that group, they might just be making a play, but I think they stepped out
They
on
did.
that.
Yeah.
But
We could
either
talk
way,
about
it's
that
exciting.
another time. Yeah.
We'll talk about that. Maybe when we talk about Ottawa, we can discuss that a little bit. Um, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nassman Hockey. Find James' work at The Fourth Period, and make sure to subscribe to Isles Fix. I believe they're still doing some newsletters throughout the summer. Definitely check their Twitter at Isles Fix to hear about their schedule and learn about that. James, bring us home.
Until next time, everyone. Let's go Islanders.